Welcome everyone to this 4-part nutrition series with Lifesum and myself, Ryan Carter. So this is the second episode and we're joined by a special guest all the way from Canada, Andy De Santis. And we will dive deeper into nutrition with today's subject, all about the misconceptions with calories in and calories out. So we will provide the tools, the knowledge, and the inspiration to create a healthy lifestyle. So before we get started, we'll just need to get through the disclaimer. So this webinar is for entertainment, educational, and inspirational purposes. Lifesum is a health and lifestyle app that provides guidance and recommendations to help you on your journey towards a healthier life, while encouraging your understanding of what nutrition, exercise, and healthy habits can do for you. Lifesum is not intended to be used for any diagnosis, advice, prevention, or treatment of disease or medical condition. Lifesum is not a medical device or app. Always consult with your doctor or healthcare professional for medical advice and treatments before making any medical decision. The recommendations in this presentation does not replace individual guidance given by your healthcare provider. So just a reminder, who am I? I am Ryan Carter. I'm a registered nutritionist, personal trainer, breathwork practitioner, and founder of Vitae. I work with clients one-to-one, in person in London and around the world, where I help them remove their obstacles and health issues and help them reach their health goals. And let me now introduce Andy.
Hey everyone, so my name is Andy De Santis and I'm a registered dietitian from Toronto, Canada. I work with clients one-on-one as well, and I'm a writer, I'm a blogger. I've been blogging for 5 years. I've been fortunate enough to write 7 books on popular topics like blood pressure, cholesterol, intermittent fasting, all sorts of fun stuff like that. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with you guys today about calories in, calories out, and why calories are more than they seem.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to have you here today, Andy.
Thanks, Ray.
I'd just like to welcome you and encourage you to post a story on your Instagram, anything which pops up that you'd feel necessary to share with your audience, or let people know that there's amazing knowledge that we're going to dive into on this episode, and tag myself, Vitae, and Andy VRD, as well as Lifesum. And that'd be amazing for you to share that, and I'll be able to see that and interact with you on Instagram as well.
This is the agenda for today, guys. So primary goal is to debunk the idea that it's just simply calories in, calories out. We're going to go through the different things that differentiate different types of calories. We're going to discuss macronutrients, we're going to discuss micronutrients, we're going to discuss satiation, we're going to discuss the concept of a calorie deficit, we're going to discuss the importance of your mental attitude, how you frame things, how you think and feel about food, and then we're also going to close off with a discussion of why all foods fit and why you can, enjoy these types of foods and reconcile your enjoyment from different types of foods as part of a healthy diet.
Okay, so let's get started and start talking about what is a calorie. So a calorie is the potential of any type of food and the energy which it contains inside. So like Andy said earlier, calorie is more than just calories when we think of food. Calorie contains macronutrients, micronutrients, even things like phytonutrients as well, plus fiber and other beneficial compounds, which we need to start thinking about and shifting our view of what a calorie really is and how it affects our health. So let's start off with macronutrients. We have fats, protein, and carbohydrates. Let's start with fats. It's the most calorie-dense macronutrient. There's different types of fats as well. We have monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, and saturated fats. All these fats have different roles and purposes in the body. Moving on to protein. Again, this is a very important macronutrient. It's also the most satiating macronutrient of them all. It also takes the most amount of energy to digest. And Also, there's different types of proteins from plant-based sources and also from animal-based sources, which we'll discuss later on. And then we have, finally, carbohydrates. Again, they're composed of different molecules and they have different roles in our body. And also, there is a large amount of personalization with how we respond with carbohydrates. I think we need to remove the belief that or the fear around certain macronutrients, and we need to eliminate them from our diets, especially with fat. In the 1950s, there was a lot of fear around fats and how they make you fat, which is simply not true. Again, with protein, recently there has been a lot of talk around fearing animal foods in particular. That's simply not true as well. There's a lot of context we need to have and a lot of personalization. We're going to respond very differently to them. So our recommendations can never be generalized.
I tend to agree, Ryan. That's absolutely right. And even using carbohydrates as an example, there's a wide spectrum as to how people respond to them. On the one end, you might have things like legumes, lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, which also, by the way, have a lot of protein, and they have a lot of fiber as well, both of which make them move through your body quite slowly and be quite satiating as a result. On the flip side, you can have foods that have little protein and have types of carbohydrates that digest relatively quickly, something like white rice or white bread. And the goal here is not to say that you have to have only one or the other, but at the very least to understand that they do affect the body differently. And I just wanted to cut in on the carbs, just simply because I know that's one of the topics that people are most interested about. So I'll do a quick intro to micronutrients, and we'll have a little discussion here. So one of the other factors that distinguishes different types of calories from each other, besides macronutrients, is the micronutrient value. So micronutrients usually comprise three things, potentially more, but at the very least, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidant compounds. Okay, so you'll have some foods. Okay, let's say vegetables, okay, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, things like that, which happen to be high in all three, okay? And now you'll also have other foods that are perhaps distinguished by their vitamin content. For example, vitamin D is found really only in foods that contain fat, and specifically fish, right? So vitamin D is an example, along with vitamin E, of if you were to avoid certain macronutrients, you're very likely as well to miss certain micronutrients, and it's yet another factor that distinguishes foods. Antioxidants, many scientific articles and newspaper articles discuss this word. It's a bit of a fantasy word of sorts, but it essentially means these healthy compounds that can't quite be classified as vitamins or minerals, but they have protective effects on our body, because with time and age, our body suffers damage from oxidation, so we want these antioxidant compounds. And another way to distinguish different types of foods, so if we take, not to harp on the white rice, brown rice example, but brown rice would technically contain more vitamins, more minerals, and more antioxidants than white rice. And so again, we're going to get to the point where this doesn't always matter, but it's important to know, and it's a distinguishing factor. And to that point, Ryan, give me some thoughts on macronutrients from your end, micronutrients.
Yeah, again, so we want to provide the body with the biggest bang for buck. So removing macronutrients is going to result in possibly the reduction of micronutrients and that spectrum that we want to contain. So vegetables are going to have those antioxidants. Also, animal foods as well are going to contain a large amount of B vitamins, which the body needs. And this is how it helps our bodies basically to produce energy. And also going back to the brain and how we're feeling, our neurotransmitters, our hormones, the communication system that we have, and the enjoyment element as well. And it's going to make our life easier when we do want to pursue a weight loss effort, for example. It's just going to help the system produce more energy, and we're going to feel more nourished as well as a result. And again, it's shifting that mindset of just purely focusing on calories. It's not about that. It's about the spectrum of micronutrients as well, and the role that this has on a health proactive mindset.
Absolutely. And before we go to the next slide, let's tie this in, I guess, to Lifesum for a moment, because one of the things I will tell you, we both work with a lot of people. It's not always abundantly clear without professional intervention which vitamins and minerals you're falling short in. You know what I mean? And this is where an application that can help you take stock of this, help you understand, well, wait a minute, you might be surprised to see that you're low in magnesium, which is quite common in the population, for example. So, there are definite benefits to being aware of the composition of your diet and to understand that perhaps you are falling short in certain micronutrients. And a little tie in there before we move on to the calorie deficit component.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where Lifesum, like Andy just said, fits in really well there, giving you an index and a rating of these foods, not purely just the calorie element, and factoring in the beneficial effects of foods which contain high levels of micronutrients.
Okay, guys, so let's talk calorie deficit or caloric deficit. And this is a goal that people may chase in a variety of forms, and sometimes in the context of a special type of diet, like a ketogenic diet or a paleo diet. And the thing here is that the differences even within these diets. Now, for example, okay, and this speaks to why calories are quite a complicated topic and not necessarily just about what comes in and what goes out. Because if we take a ketogenic diet, for example, and look, there are some people who find great joy in this style of eating. All the power to them, 100%. Now one could theoretically do a ketogenic diet and have bacon and cheese and burgers all day. Someone else could do the ketogenic diet, have kale and salmon and avocado, or you could be right in the middle and do both. And you could see there, and for the same amount of calories across 3 styles of eating, there's quite a different composition in what we discussed previously. Even though maybe the macronutrients will be similar in this case, because it's going to be largely fat, the micronutrients will be very, very different. So you start to see the nuance here in why calories do vary across the spectrum. And so that's really the main point I want to get across. And I think the main point of this slide is that while in some instances, like in a calorie deficit, you're justified in and thinking about the number, it's always more than that.
These diets, keto, paleo, vegetarian, carb backloading, all these things that you hear, all this information, they're just tools, and it's what's really applicable for you, which you really enjoy. So the ultimate goal is, yes, you need a calorie deficit to lose weight, but what's really going to be applicable for you, what's going to provide that sustainability, and Lifesum give you that, and they give you that template of these options to pick what works for you. And that's when we're going to get the results. That's when we're not going to go up and down with our weights, and we're going to be really aligned with what works for us and really understand that. So great points there, Andy, as well. We're going to move on to satiation now, and the effect of different foods in terms of how they make us feel. And again, this comes to a concept of actually how humans really work when it comes to our hunger signals and controlling for what foods to eat or consume. So previously, before technology or before even understanding what a calorie was and the role it had in the body, we would be literally governed by our satiation. So satiation would be like how foods make us feel and feel full, going without eating foods for a period of time and being sustainable with that. So we can see that mapped out on this graphic above or in front of us right now. So different foods have a different index and a hunger scale, essentially. So there is some nuance to this as well. So when we're consuming food, typically it's not individualized. So we're not just consuming white bread per se, or just consuming a yogurt. We would be having a mixed meal. So there'll be some protein with that meal perhaps, or some fat like some nuts with that yogurt, or some berries. So we have to factor in the whole meal when we're talking about satiety as well. And again, like we said previously, the biggest bang for buck here is protein, and also just whole foods in general as well. So when we're talking about what Andy said previously with brown rice, with the bran, that fiber is going to have an effect. That fiber is also going to have an influence on our microbiome, so the bacteria in our guts. And again, this is shifting our focus from just purely a weight loss intervention or a weight loss method into a health gain and enhancing our quality of life, which is what Lifesum is all about. And again, there's different effects on solids and liquids. So when we're eating a whole fruit, for example, that's going to have a different effect compared to a juice. And now this is not saying that a juice is bad or having a solid meal is the best and only way to go forward. That's not true. But there's slight variation and nuance with how this might influence our blood glucose. For example, my sensitivity to glucose might be extremely poor, therefore that it's going to spike my glucose really high, and then I might have a crash later. I might feel really tired, I might get jittery. Or if I'm going to consume a whole fruit, for example, that's going to be more sustainable with that blood glucose, and it's not going to spike up. Do you have anything to add to that, Andy?
Yeah, actually, I do. This is a great topic, a really important one. I think people underestimate a little bit. So I want to go back to I brought up white rice a few times already, and I want to kind of close the loop on it on this particular slide. The reason being, and this is just a case in point that there's no need to demonize certain types of foods, and you'll see why. So if we take white rice, for example, we can probably admit that yes, brown rice has a more favorable effect on blood sugar, more satiating because of the higher fiber, more nutrients, that's fine. But when you take white rice and you add a source of protein to it and you add a source of fiber to it, like let's say we take our chicken or our fish or our chickpeas and our broccoli, that completely changes the dynamic of how that white rice will interact with our body. It'll be slowed down to a significant extent by the nature of that mixed meal, which you discussed. And so the reason I bring that up is because I don't want anyone to think that it's brown rice or bust. Now, this is just one sub-example among all the examples, but I know from my clients, and I'm guessing yours as well, white rice is a popular food. And so just to give a level of peace of mind that there is a strong interaction with foods. And further to that point, let's mix the topic of satiation with micronutrients. So for any vegans or vegetarians watching, which Lifesum can help facilitate a strong vegan or vegetarian dietary style as well, the vitamin C that you might get from fruit actually helps absorb the plant iron that you might get from nuts or seeds. So you have a synergy there as well in terms of the micronutrients as well as the satiety, because you're combining the fiber and the sweetness from the fruit with the fiber and the protein from the nuts. So there's so many different synergies going on of foods of different caloric, micronutrient, and macronutrient composition. So again, hammering home that point that there's just so much more to a food than its caloric value, even if the caloric value may hold some relevance. Again, they're so different. Satiation, protein content, how much our body or energy spends metabolizing it, how full it makes us feel. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, definitely. And also the way that we think about how we eat these foods as well. So the speed of eating, the environment that we eat our foods. So that's going to have either a beneficial or a slightly detrimental effect on the way we absorb these nutrients and how we extract them and make energy in the body, for example. So what I'm saying is, eating at a dinner table, chewing our food adequately, that's going to have a big effect on how we extract those nutrients, the macronutrients and those micronutrients out of the food, and setting us up so we're not going to get bloated. So we're not going to run to the toilet. So we're not going to get potentially acid reflux. And that could be also talked about the time of day we also eat these foods. For example, say if we have a massive meal at the end of the day, an hour before we go to bed, like there's a high likelihood that we might get some acid reflux, or we might not have the best restorative sleep. And sleep is basically the best supplement out there that we can have on our bodies, basically. It's going to be one of the deciding factors of how we actually utilize body fat, or for example, or we break down muscle. Is how easy it's going to be to adhere to a calorie deficit, for example. And the way the body works with hormones, especially at night, it's really important to make sure our sleep, the timing of food, although yes, the overall calories is important, but we're focusing and shifting it towards a health first and the weight loss as a side effect.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point on sleep, I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. I find that, despite being in the health profession and, and really prioritizing nutrition, sleep is something that many of us it's the first thing to go. And, sleep has so many impacts that you mentioned, but also just in the practical day-to-day, your energy levels, your ability to devote time to thinking about your food choices and your physical activity, that will all diminish. Sleep diminishes as well. So, that's definitely a an overarching theme that we cannot take for granted. So, good points.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is, maybe we can do this together as well, Andy. So this is like our mental attitude and knowing what to or how to prioritize these things.
I mean, the base of the pyramid, we have sleep, lifestyle, and mindset. And I think we're going to be talking about mindset a bit today, and that's massively important. And we alluded to it a little bit earlier in the presentation, but for me, working with people, how you think and how you frame your choices, and what I always encourage, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this and how this fits, is sometimes we're all guilty of overemphasizing what happens in one day or one instance. And I always encourage people, and I try and tell myself as well, to zoom out and take a look at the whole of your dietary pattern, the whole of your lifestyle, before you are too harsh on judgments of yourself. You know what I mean? Because I think, you can tell me if you find this, but people are overly harsh on single episodes of, eating this or eating that, or doing this or doing that, which maybe they think doesn't align with their health goals. But in reality, it actually has no negative effect at all. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, people will hyper focus on perhaps the meal which is not so great, for example, and we can be honest about that. But they don't see that. Okay, but the rest of the time they're eating amazingly. They're eating their micronutrients. They're hitting their targets, and they're not rewarding with themselves, not giving them that kindness and encouragement and confidence that they're doing great. But they see these foods as cheats or treats, which I personally, and with my clients, try to shift that mindset with these foods, or with the association that these are cheats. It's just a food which you're enjoying more, which perhaps is not the best food or the best food choice when we're talking about micronutrients. But again, this is something that is all about the sustainability, the adherence, and the society which we live in. It's like that we get bombarded with all this information, with diets, with even just all these snacks, all these chocolate bars and ice creams, and it's very overwhelming. And to say that you're going to go cold turkey and go all in, and I'm just going to eat clean and nothing, that's really not logical in the way we're set up with society, with advertisements, with everything around us. So just being relaxed and seeing food for what it really is, and seeing the bigger picture, like Andy alluded to, is that every single meal it provides value. And okay, perhaps one meal's not amazing and beneficial for our overall health, but it doesn't matter. We're thinking of our mental health here, and enjoying moments with our friends, or enjoying a party. And these are the moments and experiences which really do matter, which provide more than just calories, which provide more than macro and micronutrients, and it provides that mental and community and connection and that purpose, which is all about what life is about, which is what life is about essentially. So just focusing and turning that pyramid, which is what we're looking at right now, of thinking about, okay, supplements, so this is the new supplement which is going to be the panacea, the magic pill which is going to lose my weight, or going to improve my bloating, or I need to focus about what time I eat and make sure it's straight after a workout, for example. Otherwise my gains are going to be like gone. It's not really going to work like that. Again, like you might hear these in the news or in the media about you should eat your protein meal 10 minutes after exercise. Otherwise your protein synthesis is going to be dropped by 50%. But you have to realize some of these studies are in a population, for example, like athletes. And that's not really the general public. That's not the reality for everyday life. And again, focusing on that lifestyle, mindset, sleep, that allows the body to make better decisions. It makes us to feel fuller for longer and extract all the nutrition out of food better. So that's my take on it.
I think that seamlessly flows to the all foods fit mindset, which I want to touch on briefly now. I mean, I think the fact of the matter is, I think what's going to come up what we're going to see more of in the years to come, I think more studies quantifying this, is that the negative effect of restriction on your mental health is actually outweighing the whatever negative perceived effect you might have from enjoying the foods that you really like here and there. You know what I mean? Whatever here and there means to any given person. So, you know, these quote unquote fun foods that you were just discussing, whatever, if it's cake or chocolate or ice cream, whatever the case may be, you know, the restrictive mindset to never have those foods might actually do more damage. And I think, you know, there are professionals out there who can make a good case that in fact that does do more damage than what we might perceive these foods to do to us. So rather than, you know, taking this mindset that, you know, when we only think about the calorie as a number, it may guide us in a direction where we avoid those foods at all costs, which in the long term has a counter effect if our goal, which I think for most people is to be as healthy and as happy as possible. And then I fully agree with your point as it relates to cheat meals and things like that. You know, it's a term that my clients use and something I try and, you know, shy away from, because I do think that having meals you truly enjoy, whether or not they fit the perfect micronutrient profile. Because here's the thing about micronutrients, for example, is that, you know, you don't need to have, you know, a 10 out of 10 antioxidant rich meal and snack 10 times a day to get all that you need. Once you understand, Lifesum again can help with this. Once you understand where these nutrients are coming from, you know, you're going to have a level of liberty in terms of your choices, and you'll be able to understand what to do and how you can mix and match different foods and to fit your lifestyle. And having these quote unquote cheat meals, again, not a term that either of us enjoy, these serve a very important purpose. First of all, they mix up your routine so that you avoid getting bored of what you're doing. Because sometimes, you know, although I always encourage experimenting with new things, you know, sometimes there's only so many ways you can do you know, perhaps bok choy and tofu or something like that, which are both foods I enjoy, for example. But there's only so many, you know, you need to mix up your routine. You know, we have a strong connection with food beyond just nutritional value. Like you said, socializing, the level of happiness and reward it gives us. And we have to balance this with the other side of the coin, which is all the stuff that we discussed today. And I think that we've done a pretty decent job so far in helping people be able to do just that.
Yeah, 100%. Like, we have to remember, we're humans. We're not robots. We're not computers. We have like feelings. We have emotions. And that's really important to understand. And again, I think the element of fearing calories as well, I think that needs to be discussed like briefly. Just like we shouldn't fear calories. Like, we need to eat. We need calories. So we shouldn't be on the mindset of that, I need to go to the extreme and be on a massive calorie deficit and all high calorie foods are bad per se. That's not the case. Like, all foods fit. And we shouldn't be fearing calories. We need them. We need them to feel well. We need them for our immunity. We need them for our brain health. We need them to sleep well. That's really important. And again, Lifesum, the rating system is phenomenal, and which is what I'm really grateful to be partnering up and be an ambassador for, that no other app out there does. So it has a powerful effect and brings together the awareness around different foods and how you're feeling and the journey, and making a journey about health, not just fixating on a robot with a calorie deficit, that it doesn't matter. It's more than that.
Yeah, well said. I want to close before we move on to the next slide, just by saying one last thing, because I know, you know, in the context of Lifesum and individuals who are going to use it to their benefit, you know, a lot of this ties into physical activity, and I'll leave you guys with this thought, in that, you know, for those of you who are too kind of caught up in overly restriction caloric intake, only looking food in that way, you have to realize as well that your physical performance when working out, when exercising, when playing sports, depends a lot on, you know, the right amount of calories, the right blend of macronutrients. You know, Ryan mentioned this earlier. Carbohydrates are the body's primary fuel for many different types of physical activity, and carbohydrates are very often these days what gets cut first. So, you know, if you're in the athletic world, don't be too quick to do that. Athletes consume an incredible amount of carbohydrates. Not that we necessarily should compare ourselves to athletes, but we can pick and choose little principles that they apply and apply them to ourselves to enhance our own physical performance as well. So, yeah. I'll leave it at that.
I definitely agree with that. Okay, so in closing, we hope you've learned a lot about the misconceptions around calories, or calories in, calories out.
Thanks everyone, and yeah, there'll be a discount code provided for 30% off Lifesum Premium below.
Amazing. So stay tuned for our next episode. Signing out for me, Ryan.
Catch you later, guys.